Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and I am thrilled. Today I have such a special guest. We only recently met, but I feel like we totally bonded immediately. I have Kristen Arnett with me today, and Kristen is a healthy beauty lifestyle expert and just so much more. And I'm so excited that we met and immediately was just like, we need to have a chat on the podcast about all the things.
Definitely. I feel similarly. It's so great to know you, and thank you for having me. And I hope this conversation is of true value to people listening.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I go into these podcast episodes with specific topics, but I think one of the big takeaways I took from a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago was just about how we both, as we've matured in our womanhood and our age and just with life experience, have just really had our own journeys with beauty and self-confidence and empowerment. And really, we've both had experiences with superficial beauty and the difference between superficial beauty and inner beauty. And I want you to share some of your experiences and just some of the things that you've learned. I know that I've had my journey with loving myself and not loving myself and trying to find ways to love myself that were extremely disappointing. And yeah, I just want to get into it because I think it's just so interesting. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a really ubiquitous conversation. I was a makeup artist in some form or another for the majority of my 25 plus years in beauty so far. And I worked in retail in a store in college. I've done fashion and celebrities and all over the world, right? And there is not one person that I can remember in my career of working with thousands of people at this point who's ever sat down in my chair and said, I love my eyes. I love my lips. Can you just accentuate that today? They sit down and they tell me everything that's wrong with them that they want me to fix. Oh, I've got this pimple. Oh, I have such dark circles today. And I think that is the undercurrent of what I've seen in terms of every single person, no matter how powerful, beautiful, how many covers of magazines or albums they've been on, have this insecurity that is just embedded into the way that we jump off talking about beauty.
What do you think that's about? Because I have my reasons, but I want to know what your reasons are. And if you can relate, like I definitely can relate. And I think that it has so much to do with subconscious narratives, all these different things, obviously societal pressure. But what is your opinion about why women are just so hard on themselves, so judgmental? And what do you think the way out is?
Well, I feel like that's the question of the ages, but really as human beings, and then particularly as women, we're not taught to love ourselves. And that if we love ourselves too much and we celebrate the beauty that we are, we're punished for it a lot of times. I've found that throughout my career. I've found that in different life experiences, other women that I've talked to, just things you see on the media also. When we lift women up, oh, she's so beautiful, she's so sexy, she's so smart, there is a faction that comes in and goes, how dare you? And tries to sort of smack that down. And so it's like, there's always a trepidation around how much can I shine my beauty? And I think, honestly, there's a lot of cultural, religious, societal power plays that are made to specifically oppress women and women's bodies because we are so magical and beautiful and artful and gorgeous. And I mean gorgeous, not from like, oh, you're so pretty, but there is something about the essence of feminine beauty, no matter what body you're in, that is captivating and delicious. And when people find themselves not sure how to address that energy, especially if they are quote unquote tempted by it, then they want to squelch it. Like, that's the problem. I'll deal with that outer thing as the problem and tell them they're too much because I don't know how to deal with myself.
Definitely. And I definitely see that from an outward perspective. And we see that so much in society now, which is so sad because, we're supposed to be really modern. But do you think that women have that sense of almost inner judgment within themselves, that they reach a certain threshold of getting to a place where the opportunity to shine is there and they're afraid to step in to it? Because I know for myself, I had that, I think.
Well, do you think that came from how you were, let's say, born? Or do you think it's because of all the things you learned and were told along the way?
I definitely think it was what I was learned and told along the way. A huge part, and we've talked about this, a huge part of my unlearning and healing has been to try to forget and just remember the intrinsic beauty that I am as an essence, not even as a physical person, while also honoring and valuing and prioritizing my physical self, because it does impact my self-esteem, not my self-worth. And I think that there's a really big difference between self-esteem and self-worth. And we're inherently worthy, of course, just by virtue of being souls and being, like you mentioned, gorgeous and captivating, and everybody is unique and beautiful. And your esteem can be affected by how you look just by virtue, because we're in a human form. And I think both and can be true.
Yeah. Well, we have an ego. We have a consciousness. Birds. I have a lot of birds out my window. I feed them, and I don't see them being like, oh my God, your feathers are looking great today. Wow. Oh, my feathers are better than yours. Like we have so much complexity and dynamic in our very consciousness as human beings that allows us to be critically aware, conscious, egotistical in a way that's not necessarily always bad, but our ego has a use for it, right? And I'm super curious to hear you talk about the difference between self-esteem and self-worth, because I think a lot of times we, again, say like, oh, you can't have any ego. I have a shirt that says your ego is not your amigo. Oh. Which is hilarious, but it's also not true. It is your amigo, because, or amiga in this case, for me. Yeah. But because it causes me to want to brush my teeth and wash my hair and get rid of my body odor. Like there's aspects that are always going to serve you. And then the volume turned up too high on any one of the things that makes us such complex beings, like competitiveness, for example. Competition is fantastic in a form in which it is not creating a loss of life force and self-worth.
Exactly. And one of my biggest, what's the word I'm thinking? Like values and just desires for the work that I put out in the world is to toe that line and get people to really understand that there is value in being egoless and also having ego. And how are we going to navigate that? And how are we going to not only navigate that externally, but within our own selves?
Well, the thing is, I can only speak to my own journey in terms of ego and also self-worth when it comes to the negative thoughts that I have thought about me. And when I was younger, I think it's common that we know that as we're younger, we have more insecurities in a way. And then it was we age, we wise up, we age up, we wise up, we deepen our personal, I would say, well that we pull from. And when I was younger, I grew up in Southern California. Every single woman around me looked like Malibu Barbie. And that was the goal. And so if you didn't look like that, then you didn't count. That was kind of the message there. And, being very pale, not having big boobs, not having a body that necessarily looked like what that kind of body at the time was considered to be ideal. I worked really hard to get there. I even went and saw a plastic surgeon to see if she could fix my eyes and my ears, because I didn't like my ears. And I didn't know about getting a boob job so much, but I knew a ton of people who were, and so
How old were you? How old were you?
Oh gosh, I was probably like 19 to 23 when I really grappled with that. And I had the opportunity to go to Europe for about 4 or 5 months when I was 24. And that changed me because all of a sudden I saw beauty outside of Malibu Barbie. And, Lord knows I love the Barbie movie. But what I mean is this very specific standard for what beauty should look like, this very plasticized, blonde hair, big boob, tan, perky butt, full lips, and I think that that's still very much the standard, this kind of Eurocentric Barbie. But what's funny is going to Europe, that is not how the women look. And I also understood that as women aged in Europe, they still dressed. They still looked sexy or beautiful or cool. And they made this effort that I didn't see older women in the US making. And I think part of that now is like, once you passed quote unquote your prime, what are you good for in the US anymore? And I can only speak from living in the US. I can't speak from living or growing up in the US, but other places. But I lived then later in my fashion career in Italy. And I spent a lot of time in Europe between Paris and Milan and then New York. And one of the things that I notice is that as women get older, this American society views them as less useful, less valuable, because if you can't produce a child, what good are you? Whereas in Europe, I saw these older women who were just filled with panache. They had something there. They put themselves together to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And when my friends who were designers, because, of course I made friends with the designers at Armani and Dolce & Gabbana, and that's who I hung out with, right? And I showed them a picture of one of my, I won't give too many details, but a friend back in the US back at that time. And they went, "How old is she?" I said, "Oh, she's my age." And they were like, "She looks so old." And it was because of the way she was dressing, doing her hair, and not doing anything else with herself. And that was super interesting. There's a shift in mentality.
Yeah, I agree. I've been so lucky also to travel, not so much in the industry perspective like you, but just from a tourist and just person who's interested in other cultures and traveling. And I do think that there is a difference of taking personal responsibility and making decisions. I think there's a reverence in taking responsibility for yourself that women outside of the US have more than, this is a generalization. And I think I don't mean to, of course I think I'm someone who lives in the US that takes responsibility for my decisions, but this is something that I think we all align on this, that is such a root of beauty, is the reverence you have for yourself, the fact that you see taking responsibility, making decisions, being accountable, prioritizing yourself, and prioritizing what needs to be prioritized as you mature, as you age, that changes, and being willing to be awake to some of the ways that maybe you're not living your life in a way that will give you the best opportunity and the best chance to prioritize yourself, because you're not willing to see certain things about yourself. And I think that in Europe, from a general lifestyle perspective, I think people are more set up better in that way. I think America is very, like you said, about producing and what can I do? And there's a lot of, I need to put my needs aside, or can't focus on me because that might be egotistical, and there are all these other reasons. But I do think that there needs to be a shift in perspective and in mindset, that slowing down potentially to look inward and to understand yourself better is the unlock you need for beauty, but you have to be willing to see that as valuable almost.
I think anytime you look inward, you start to see beauty in everything. And you see it in yourself, you see it in the things around you, you cultivate more gratitude and appreciation, in addition to confronting things that feel very ugly. And that's what's scary, right? It's like, oh, if I only went inward and I was like, everything's great, it's a rose garden, like it would be fine.
Well, I remember when I started teaching yoga, this was the analogy that I would give people when I first started, and I would see the yogis, they looked so perfect to me, right? They had this energy, they had this like vibe, there were all these vibes, right? It's like this whole thing. And I made a lot of assumptions. Now I can say I made a lot of assumptions. Back then, I thought that it was what I need, right? I was like, let me go from here where I don't feel good about myself, and this is the direct line, stick the IV in me. This is a direct line to feeling amazing about myself. I want to be like these women, this is so great. And it was so not like, yes, did yoga and mindfulness get me to a place? But yes, that is amazing, but it's messy and it's dirty. And I don't just see the rose garden. I see all the crap and the garbage that everybody throws in the rose garden at the same time. And I think that when you're staring at something from really far back, like the top of the mountain, and you're looking at the rose garden, the roses are very colorful. So you see only the roses. But when you go down the mountain into the rose garden, you see the shit, right? You see the crap, you see everything. And it's at that point that a lot of times people get very disappointed because they had assumptions about what it was going to be. And ultimately, nothing is what you imagine it to be. Nothing is going to be that, give me the pill and it's going to take me to euphoria, unless you do that, but that ends and there's a come down and there's a hard crash,
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, is everyone's looking in beauty for a magic pill. If somebody could figure out, quote unquote, the fountain of youth, I mean, sure, that's what they're all trying to do. But why is the goal trying to find the fountain of youth? Why is that the goal? And I think that's a better question for me lately, is because the concept of anti-aging is stupid. You're aging, the end. You're born, you're aging. But we don't value aging. We don't value what comes with it. And that deep wisdom and that deep power that we get as we age actually becomes, I think, threatening. Because if you're only there to produce babies, and every friend of mine, I do not have children, but every friend of mine who's had a baby, they're exhausted. They're like, oh my God, I haven't slept in 27 years. And not 20, you get my point. And they're doing the child thing. And now in the US, and the career thing. And I'm watching how little we support women. And then we're just like, poof, goodbye. And at their most ripe, actually, at their most interesting. And we celebrate men with salt and pepper hair and their distinguished faces and wrinkles. And women are supposed to look like AI robots who've never made an expression in their life. Are you kidding me? Why is that the goal, is for women to not have the power of the expression of their feelings? So no wonder it is so hard for us to confront feelings. When you're expected to walk around society like you can't move your forehead and you shouldn't have lines next to your eyes, and you've never cried, deeply ugly cried, yeah, it's going to be really hard to look at the shit because it's not acceptable. I mean, how many times, I don't know about you, but I've done meditations in groups with people, and I started crying, and I become so self-conscious. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone knows I'm crying. And how, oh God, am I going to be able to stop it? Like, that's hard.
It is so hard. I feel crying was a huge dam breaker for me, I feel. When I started to appreciate crying. Because I really do now, actually. When I access crying, other than like my husband makes fun of me that I like cry at the weird bank commercials with the families and all that stuff. Like I cry at those now. But I do think that there are people that are not in touch with their feelings that cry at bank commercials. It's when I would be alone in my apartment. And I remember these so clearly. It's like, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be alone in my apartment. And even now, sometimes, of course, because we go through our different layers of healing, even as we're quote unquote more healed than we were before. But it would be when I would just be with myself and something arises and I just have a feeling and it just is so big in my body. And then it just comes out through tears. And now I know that I'm about to get to the other side of something amazing is going to happen. Something is going to unlock. And to me, that's manifesting. I feel like people talk so much about manifesting and people manifest, it's like vision boards and there's so much thinking related to manifesting. But I really think manifesting is when you can unlock an organic, authentic feeling and have an expression of that feeling. And it's so true and natural, even if it's ugly, even if it hurts. And getting to that place where you can disconnect the pain from your self-worth and be like, oh, I'm just feeling something deeply. And now if I can just connect to what I really desire and want and value about myself, that's going to come into me and going to be me so much quicker.
There is so much power in manifesting when there's emotion behind it. And I have to remind myself of this constantly. I've achieved some really interesting things with my life, things I didn't even think were possible. How the heck did I become a makeup artist who speaks fluent Italian, working the best fashion shows in the industry? Nobody handed me that. Nobody said, here's a life path for you. Yeah. But I wanted it so much and I didn't know how it was possible. And through visualizing and really getting into the emotion and the feeling of it in different ways, and I use different therapists and modalities and ways to get into touch with that without it just being like, that's a pretty picture, but really feeling myself deeply in that is when I've manifested the most cool, amazing things. And also not being so attached to the specific of it, but saying to the universe, this is the feeling, this is the thing I'm going for, but also you could give me better, this or better.
Yep, for sure.
And I forget it every single day. Every single day, I'm like, I really want to do this thing. And I forget the most basic tools of manifestation and asking for spiritual guidance or guides or angels or whatever you think is with you. I think there's a lot of angels around me. I know it. I shouldn't even say I think. I know. And the other night, a bird like almost hit me in the head. And I always notice those things. It's getting my attention. We are interacting with the world on so many vibrational levels and the universe and in ways that I don't think most of us understand are actually attached to our beauty as well. Like the web of things that we are connected to. Like I'm looking at the most beautiful bouquet of flowers in front of me right now. You can't see them, but I put them next to my monitor because I like to look at them because it fills me with joy and whatever it is for somebody. And also like I put I can't pull up the big bouquet, but I do little bouquets and I put them around the house and I move them. Like whatever room I'm going to be in, I bring it. I eat on the special plates. I use fancy glasses for no reason.
No, but that's exactly what we're talking about. You are revering your own beingness as enough of a reason to make your life beautiful around you. And I think that if we look at a lot of women who don't feel beautiful inside, it's because they're not doing enough of that, because they're not necessarily doing it for someone else. They don't feel like it's a good use of their time. Maybe there's a certain feeling of, I feel dumb doing that. It needs to be for someone else. And I think that is such a huge thing because there's so many women that I work with who even just straight up say like, oh, when I'm doing a dinner party for a friend's birthday, I'm like so attention to detail. And then in the same vein, they're like, yeah, I just didn't have time to make myself anything. So I had to eat the thing that was there, and it made me feel like crap, and I just had to eat it. I was like, well, why didn't you put the same amount of reverence that you did for work or for your friend's party into what you're choosing to eat for yourself? Why can't you muster up that energy for you? And that's something that I really believe is such a core value. And you only can muster up the energy for you when you get to like a certain rock bottom. And then you muster up the energy when you like follow somebody else's rule or something.
It's so interesting how many people want to do things that they think other people are going to applaud them for. And that's a different reason for doing it than this brings me joy. This brings me pleasure. No one's going to come in my house and see the bouquet that I made probably this week. I don't think I have visitors. You know what I mean? The cat doesn't care.
Yeah.
He is not interested in beauty. He's interested in his snacks.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just for me. And sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes I don't feel like doing the whole shebang. I don't, and there is that reality too of prioritization. And so what I find is that if I can make my daily habits already in support of more beauty, then it's not such a big effort or a choice for me to have it more and more around me. And that up levels the entire energetic container that I'm in. So when I say I use the fancy glasses for no reason, I don't have glasses in my cabinet that I don't like. I don't have the weird gas station tournament glass that doesn't mean anything to me. My little pink water glass, it makes me happy. And I like seeing it. And the same thing with silverware and plates. The things that you touch and look at on a day-to-day basis do not have to cost a lot. I am a thrift store queen.
And it doesn't have to be such a heavy lift. You don't have to do it. It doesn't have to be. That's why sometimes these habit things, where it's like, let's do habit. I mean, I think it's good, but it's like 8 ounces of water a day, where it's like a running list. When habits are a list that you feel like you need to do, another thing you have to do, it's like, again, like you're following a rule, you're following a program to get you to have healthier habits. And it's like, okay, but like you don't need 15 habits that you have to do. What is one or two things? Look inward. What do you like? Like, what do you want to do? And then do it. Most
How many
women
of us ask that?
That's
what do
what I'm
I
saying.
want? What do I like? What do I feel like in this moment?
That's why, like, it's so much easier than people think it's going to be. They're like, oh, it's going to take up so much time to create these new habits and to eat well. It really won't. You just need to understand, like, give yourself one thing that you want to add, or like ask yourself, what's one preference that I have that, you can surround yourself with every day and commit to engaging with. Yeah. And then you do that one thing, and then it's going to be generative for another thing and another thing. And then before you know it, in 30 days, you have your 15 new habits that were intrinsically motivated. And that's it. And all you had to do was look inside yourself and commit to being curious and taking action. And I think that being curious and then taking the action, because you do have to take the action. You can't just buy stuff and then let it sit there. You have to engage with it.
I find this with beauty products. I find this with how people buy moisturizers and more lipsticks and more eyeshadows and more things. And I'm like, you have too much stuff as it is. You just don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. And whereas food is a little different because you consume it, beauty, in terms of application and technique, is something that people struggle with, and rightfully so. I made a career out of makeup, hair, styling, understanding photography. I've been in front of the camera, behind the camera a lot, and I know the tricks and the work and the things that go on behind creating what you see as a gorgeous image, we'll say. And then we get into our bathrooms and look at ourselves just when we're freshly waking up with our puffy eyes and our weird bed head. And it's confronting because you don't realize looking at yourself that everybody looks like that when they get up, pretty much. You know what I mean? And I say everybody because wherever you're at on your journey, 15-year-olds look like 15-year-olds when they get up. And different people are blessed with different genetics or have taken care of their skin and didn't expose it to the sun. And that has something like there's a bazillion things that make us different, but we get in front of that mirror and we start being so nasty. What beauty comes of that? What is inspiring? Like, what do I feel like doing? Mostly what I hear is I just hate looking at myself.
Yeah.
That's a big jump from what do you feel like doing today for your beauty routine, from hate. And so some of the things I want to do is normalize a better inner conversation of appreciation for ourselves first.
Yes. Yes. That is so right. Like, don't you think that there's so much value in the routine or like the ritual?
Absolutely.
There's such a different, and I think that routine has gotten masculinized, I think, where it's like kind of so aggressive. It's like, I need my routine. So I like
productivity morning plan.
Yeah. What is my routine? What is my to-do list today? My Long
Island outside looking at the bird feeder with my cup of tea.
Like, I think it's ritual. And look, I'm one of those, I think, blessed genetically ones. Like at 40, almost 44, I constantly get mistaken for being 30. And so, I do think that from a face perspective, I can look in the mirror and know that I do have a very youthful look, but I do notice in the mirror, new lines and this and that. And, everybody has their stuff, right? So I know that I do look young for a person my age. And that's, whether you want to call that blessed or not, because I do think aging is beautiful, like you said, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do have to on the daily stop myself from judging myself and really just lock into the ritual of my beauty routine, which is very inside out, right? Like it's very much like I'm going to wash my face, I'm going to use this product. And it's not to halt time or halt the aging, but it's really to teach myself how to appreciate the inevitable aging. And for me to deal with the emotions that are coming up for me. And I think that it's about connecting to the process of acceptance and I guess I am going to say connecting to the process of acceptance rather than connection to an aspirational self. And I'd love to hear your opinion about aspirational self, because I do think that connecting to your aspirational self is so big in the zeitgeist these days. And even for me, when I guide women to healing their relationship with food and their body, a big resource that I have them connect with is their aspirational self, how that woman is living, but not in a place that disconnects you from the reality again of the messiness and the emotions that come with just being a human person. Because just connecting to your aspirational self isn't necessarily going to get you to the place you want to get to with your self-acceptance. I think you also have to know how to be with the discomfort of the road to being an aspirational self and being willing to say that the aspirational self that I imagine, like I can't hold too tightly to her because there might be a different version of that beautiful, healed, self-acceptance that's different. And I have to accept her as well.
I use in my work with my clients something called the beauty muse. And the beauty muse is anything you want her to be. And a lot of the prompts that I give are, let's start collecting names and faces and people who make you feel that spark of joy or beauty or excitement when you see them or you take in their energy. And that becomes a template for the aspirational self. Because if the aspirational self is still built on either fixing something that is wrong with you or an idea about societal perfection that you want to get to, it's not an aspirational self that's healthy to me. I think the healthy version is to really examine and deep dive into, what do I want to feel like every single day? And that goes back to manifestation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look, every day you don't feel great. I got sick for the first time in, 2.5, 3 years, a couple weeks ago, and I did not feel great. But I cared for myself like I was a little queen in my own condo. You know what I mean? Like, as best I could. I drank my broth. I put raw garlic in it. Like I did the things that I know work for me. And I took my herbs and I laid and I rested and I didn't yell at my body. I didn't say, oh my God. I didn't look in the mirror and go, wow, you look sick.
Yep.
Like, why beat yourself up when you're already down? So anyways, the point being is like, no, not every day you're going to be your aspirational self or your beauty muse. But when you have an idea of what it feels like to embody, then you can imbue beauty, and that becomes a greater and greater, like you said, generative experience. I love that phrase because we do gain momentum that way. And it is more fun that way. When I choose my clothes, it's for me like, how do I want to show up wherever I'm showing up today? I've had people stop me in the grocery store, in Costco, and be like, you are just magical. Why am I dressed like that in Costco? It's not because I'm putting on a theater performance. It's because I'm putting on my magic. I'm enjoying my magic. I'm wearing a silk skirt in Costco that flows and the fan blew it. And now I'm just having this whole goddess moment in front of broccoli. Okay, and no one's there to photograph it. It's not an Instagram moment.
Although,
I feel like
if you want to see you having amazing moments like that, your Instagram does have some of those. So listeners, if you want to go to Kristen's Instagram and check out her magical moments in her outfits, you can. And we're going to share all of that below because that makes me happy when I see that. Because it's so true. But I feel the same. For so many years, I just didn't prioritize my physical appearance in the world. It was almost like I went to the other side, right? It was kind of, I thought it was all for the outside. And I think that's why, because maybe I got messaging that my value is physical. So I went the other way and kind of just didn't care at all. But when I reclaimed my empowerment for my physical appearance, that was amazing. And it's very small. Like I don't have a big beauty routine, but like today, it's like before a conversation, I used my hair wrap and I was like, you know what? I'm going to dry my hair today instead of letting it air dry. It's like, I'm going to put on a green dress because last time I spoke to Kristen, I was bad lighting and it was really bad colors. I cared about wanting to physically show up because it makes me feel more connected to my essence, which is beautiful. And I feel like we live in a physical world. And I think that was something that I had to reconcile, especially being somebody who is very connected to the spiritual world, embracing the physical world and reclaiming it to not be about being validated or being chosen, or that if I look a certain way, I'm going to be loved more. I'm going to be chosen romantically. I'm going to be better. And I think finding within myself the reasons why I connect to going to Costco in a dress and lip gloss and mascara. I do the same thing because it does make me feel more like me. And I think that that's so important.
And, there is this friction that people have, especially in the spiritual community. I've been in the spiritual community since I was 19 and I'm 46 now. So
Same.
I feel like I can speak to this, right? And that is, my physical appearance does not matter. You are a bag of flesh. It really doesn't define your value, who you are, what you're worth. But there is psychology around the fact that we are in physical bodies. We are in a physical world where our human consciousness, once we're past survival, needs to create beauty. Beauty is something that we uniquely have as a tool, as a way to express something larger than just surviving in our physical self. And I think it's really important, and these are the concepts that I teach to my clients and in my membership. The pillars that I talk about, and you just use one of the words, they go release, reclaim, reframe.
Mm-hmm.
First, you got to get rid of the toxic products and the toxic thinking, as far as I'm concerned. And that's a journey, right? But what I mean is, like, let's start identifying where you're being mean to yourself, both what you put on yourself and what you tell yourself. Then reclaim. So, okay, wow, now I've had this big awareness. And like you said, the empowerment there is to go, well, crap, what do I want to do now that feels good if it's not this stuff that I was used to doing? And that's learning all kinds of different ways to reclaim things. And it continues to still allow you to be introspective. And then the reframe is, now let's decorate it. Now let's put the big frame around the art piece that is you when you want.
But I think the main theme is that to unlock your beauty, you have to be willing to get radically honest with yourself in all the ways that you are hindering your own beauty. And that doesn't just mean I have too much weight on my body. I need to lose weight. It's like weight loss might be an unfolding and a result, and maybe is actually something you might want to do to feel your self-esteem. But a lot of times, a beauty essence is, where am I blocking that from happening with my self-judgments, with my self-talk, with my negativity, with my belief systems? It's like one of those, what's that quote about love? It's like, you have to look at all the ways that you're blocking love from your life instead of seeking love, look at all the ways that you're stopping it from coming in, or something to that effect. And I think it's the same with beauty.
There's beauty all around us. Yeah. And if we look at what the standards of beauty were 100 years ago, 200 years ago, right? Then it tells us that it doesn't matter the age that you're in. There's always going to be different standards. And especially as we get older, wishing away wrinkles is not helpful. Yes, I want to care for myself. Yes, I don't want to look like I never did anything to prioritize also touching my skin. Every time you touch yourself on your face, apply your moisturizer, your makeup, it is an opportunity for you to lovingly infuse energy from your fingers and go, I love you. Because who else is going to love you? Who else is going to offer you that love today? You cannot wait for your partner to do it. And that's the magic of touching your skin. Mm-hmm. That's the magic of feeling your pulse under your fingers. Even if you let the water run on your hands, feel it. Feel what it's like to have this incredible sensory experience instead of always trying to attack it.
Yeah, and that's so true. And there's opportunity to connect to your beauty and to create the habits of feeling beautiful every day in a million different ways. It doesn't have to just be, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put makeup on. Just like you said, you can just put water on your face. You can intend to, just with your attention, you can feel beautiful. It's like, be process oriented, I feel. And I have a similar experience with my clients too. It's like they start to work with me, before they start to work with me, they're like focusing heavily on external stuff. They're like following a plan. They're doing their workout. They're managing how to get to a result. Instead of when I work with them and I take them inward and we simplify it, and it's just like, you don't have to have so many directives. You just have to have the right directive that comes from yourself. And then the same thing happens. Like a month or two later, they're like not even focusing so much on the physical stuff. And they're like, oh my God, I've lost like 10 pounds. And it's not even like the main thing anymore. But like I for sure notice it and feel better about myself. And it's all together. But if they would have lost the 10 pounds without the other internal process-oriented alignments, I don't think they would have had the same self-worth, that same self-confidence that they really got from it. They would just be like, oh, I have a result. Oh my God, how am I not going to lose this result? It gets more contracted.
Oh, that's the truth.
So the same thing, if they just focus on the process themselves, the expansion from the inside, the weight comes off, great, and that is something that's important to a lot of my clients specifically. And they feel more connected to their beauty because they're also prioritizing their routine and their ritual in the morning, and they're like prioritizing themselves, and they're having better conversations, expressing their needs, taking care of their own needs. And it all holistically as an ecosystem comes together. And I think that you have to just be willing to go deep into that part of it and then take responsibility for engaging with the actions that you need to do. And it doesn't have to be this huge lift. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be like, I have to work out for an hour a day, and then I have to go to the grocery store, and I have to meal prep, and I have to do a 5-step beauty routine in the morning and then at night, and like all these things, right? Like that's just not it. I'd get overwhelmed and hide under the covers and go to sleep,
I think every time somebody gets a little win, it becomes the opportunity to be like, I did that. And that increases self-esteem too.
Right. Let's build. If you're willing to acknowledge that you feel like crap and take ownership of that. And that is the huge thing. You have to be willing to say that feels like crap and I don't deserve to feel like crap, and feeling like crap is not somewhere I want to be. And yes. I think that is the major thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And I feel like I would love to chat with you for like hours and hours and hours. But
part 2.
Definitely part 2. But I want you to share where we can find you. You'd mentioned your program. I would love you to share about that, where we can find that, where we can connect, all those things.
So you can go to my website, KristenArnett.com. And if you do /freebies, you will find a couple of tools there that are, my free downloads, and they're opt-ins into my newsletter. And that's a way to just get into my world. And one of them is 10 makeup and skincare secrets over 40. And one is the Toss the Toxins toolkit that helps you buy healthier products. And it's fantastic. I've had people try to rip it off so many times. The point is, I also have a membership that is called the Healthy Beauty Oasis. And it is specifically targeted to the needs of people over 40, 50, 60. And we talk about the inner and outer beauty bridge, the, release, reclaim, reframe in all these different ways, and give you lots of tools there. And then I do private one-on-one beauty and style upgrades. So we look at all the parts and pieces, makeup, skincare, hair care, your style, your beauty muse, your colors, everything that matters to you, so that you can show up as the person you aspire to be, because it makes you feel amazing.
I love that. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for the conversation today, for joining me. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you for showing up every week and listening to the conversations about how to heal, how to be your best self, how to love food, how to love yourself, love your body. Please please subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe on YouTube as well. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.